All right, everybody. Big news on this Wednesday, October 2nd. Maybe a historic day in NASCAR. I don't know. We'll see. But
Just eat my popcorn, bud. Just eat my popcorn.
Oh, I see what you're doing.
This is going to be fun.
I see. Jordan brought his popcorn. My name's Jeff Gluck. Jordan, Team Chaos is obviously excited for what is to come here. Jordan brought a popcorn for his prop. I brought a lawsuit. So I guess mine's not as exciting. But yes, we are here to talk about this that was filed in district court in North Carolina this morning. Something that I think we suspected might be coming. We thought that this could end in legal action after those teams didn't sign. It seemed like the most logical path was for 2311 and Front Row to maybe pursue some sort of legal action. But we didn't know exactly what was going to happen, when, all that stuff. Now we know. We have this lawsuit here. 2311 and Front Row have jointly accused NASCAR of being a monopoly. This is an antitrust lawsuit, and this is very serious. They've hired Jeffrey Kessler, who, if you're not familiar with him, he is the legal force behind some of the biggest sports decisions across the entire landscape. NFL free agency is his doing. The NIL deals with college athletes getting paid, his doing. Recently, U.S. women's national team getting equal pay to the men for soccer. That's his doing. NBA salary cap, things like that. He represented Tom Brady in Deflategate, all this stuff. I mean, he has had his hand in all sorts of stuff. And now NASCAR. So, Jordan, this is a big day. We don't really know what is going to happen with all this, but first, your initial reaction to what is going on. Oh, of course, Jordan in the big moment freezes. Well, I'll just start with my reaction because Jordan's, internet,
right.
as usual,
I'm back.
Whatever, Jordan. I'm going to start reading through the lawsuit. You get your internet.
That's fine. I'm back.
Okay, fine. Go ahead, Jordan. What do you got?
I'm not surprised. I mean, you said this was likely, and I mean, ever since that weekend at Atlanta, like, it was inevitable that there was going to be a lawsuit filed, and it certainly came. And I would actually go back even further than this. If going through back 2 years, there was always going to be this showdown. It felt like between 2311 and NASCAR. There'd been, the negotiations were contentious. 2311 was the leading force in these negotiations. They were the loudest.
Yes. Anyway, Jordan, is NASCAR trying to take out Jordan's internet? All right, listen, let's talk about the lawsuit while Jordan gets his stuff together here. The introduction to this, there's some strong comments. Starts off with saying, this is a case about the unlawful monopolization of premier stock car racing by the France family in order to enrich themselves at the expense of premier stock car racing teams. They have anti-competitive and exclusionary practices that NASCAR has employed. Now, what are those? Well, for one thing, buying the tracks, right? They feel like, even though ISC was originally, you could say it was NASCAR. Once they bought ISC, and those are officially NASCAR tracks, they feel like those are, exclusive. They control those. No other series could have those. And they require exclusive. So no other stock car racing series, unless approved by NASCAR, could race on those places. They bought ARCA. Now you might say, well, ARCA, I mean, come on now. Like, is ARCA really a competitor to NASCAR? No, you would probably argue at the time, but that was a pathway where that was a stock car series. It was a national series in some ways. And so once they bought ARCA, that prevented anybody from trying to go to ARCA and saying, okay, let's do this, right? We also have, for instance, the next gen car. This is interesting, and I'm not even sure. I'd like to hear Jordan's take on this when he comes back, and I'm not sure we realize this, but basically, the next gen car. Did we know that the teams do not own the parts or the cars? that even though they pay for the parts, $3 million per year, it says, to run one chartered team for a full season in the Cup Series, NASCAR teams do not retain any ownership of these parts and are forbidden from using the cars in any other racing event. So they remain the property of NASCAR, even though they are bought by the teams, or the teams play for them. This says also, the lawsuit says that it costs approximately $18 million per year to run one chartered team. And that is not including the driver salary. So $18 million a year, they estimate, plus driver salary to run a team. Also, in addition to these practices, they say that they were, as we talked about at Atlanta, they were put in a situation where we've talked about, okay, they were threatened, all this stuff, right? They were threatened. What's going to happen here? What if they don't sign it? And we thought they would lose their charters, right? They would lose them. Well, this says that NASCAR threatened to eliminate the charter system altogether for 2025 and beyond if a substantial number of teams did not sign by the deadline on September 6th, which was the Friday of Atlanta. So, Jordan, you're back in now. I was wondering, did we know that the next gen, all the parts are still owned by? Anyway, this goes on to say here that the France family and NASCAR are monopolistic bullies, and bullies will continue to impose their will to hurt others until their targets stand up and refuse to be victims. That moment has now arrived. We had a conference call with Jeffrey Kessler, the lawyer, with Bob Jenkins, with Curtis Polk. There basically sounds like they're going to take this all the way, or they're willing to, at least. Now, here's the thing. Will this really ever go all the way to court? Will this ever get resolved, by the legal system, or will they settle? You would think that in all reality, this would get settled beforehand, because NASCAR, to my knowledge, has never opened up their books. And Jim France is a party to this as well. All right, right here it says Jim France and NASCAR. So when they do discovery, this would mean that Jim France also has to open up his books to tell how much he's making. And so in addition to NASCAR and the tracks having to show every bit of income, every bit of money that flows through NASCAR, Jim France would have to do the same as part of the discovery that happens pre-trial. So is NASCAR going to want to get to that point? Are they going to want to tell the teams? Because now that means if the teams know, unless there's some sort of protective order that shields it from the public, we would all know. We would all know every bit of money that's going through NASCAR, which we don't right now, right? And to be fair, we don't know the team's financials either, aside from the fact that they always are saying, "Hey, we're barely breaking even, or we're losing money." Now, of course, we would like to hear NASCAR's side of this. At this point, we have not heard NASCAR's side of this. So I'm reading from a lawsuit here that has not been responded to by NASCAR. We have not got any comment from NASCAR. We have not been able to talk to anybody from NASCAR to get to their response to this. So we're happy to share that in case this sounds one-sided. But for now, we're left with people who have chosen to speak, and we don't know the rest of the story. So continuing to do this, in addition to NASCAR having the monopolistic terms that they feel like were illegal, the latest offer the team said in this lawsuit, this is something else we did not know, exactly what was in the new charter deal. They say that this included numerous one-sided terms that were far less than the teams would receive in a competitive market. It did not provide a fair split of revenues so that teams would have a chance to earn a reasonable return on their investment. Now, we did hear, that NASCAR has given them much more money from the TV deal, right? So that's a claim that they've made. We don't have the other side, but I don't know if that's what they're referring to. Another thing, this says the new charter agreement seized control over team intellectual property rights to be used for NASCAR's benefit. So teams would not control their own intellectual property anymore, like their own branding. Is that what I'm reading that? We obviously know it did not provide permanent charters to the teams. It did not, which the teams feel affects their charter appreciation. We know that the highest charter sold for $40 million. We think that many are worth more than that. But if they're not permanent, they won't go up as much because they could always be taken away, as NASCAR threatened to on September 6th. It also says that this did not give teams the ability to resist unilateral NASCAR rules that increase team costs. So they're saying the teams did not have enough say in the rules decisions. It did not give teams any meaningful role in the governance of the sport. It also imposed terms that would undermine the relationship between teams and drivers. So maybe sounds like NASCAR was trying to have more control over the drivers in the new charter agreement. And this says, according to the lawsuit, there was a release that teams had to sign in the new charter agreement that the teams believe NASCAR would have required them to release any antitrust claims if they signed it. So if they signed the charter, they could not bring this lawsuit as they have done here today. It also changed the language from before. It said the teams cannot participate in any other stock car racing events. Now they have changed that language to say any other automobile or truck racing events other than NASCAR. So the teams are feeling like, well, does that mean NASCAR was trying to head them off if they did something that was other than stock cars? Would they count, in theory, would they count SRX cars as stock cars? Like if that had been a route, I don't know. So why is that part a big deal? Because this says here that 2311, according to the lawsuit again, is currently in the process of acquiring a third charter. 2311 and Stewart-Haas Racing entered into a purchase agreement on August 7th. So 2311 trying to expand to 3 cars with an agreement to buy the charter. But the transaction, this says, is still in escrow and requires approval from NASCAR. But Stewart-Haas went ahead and signed the agreement for that charter. Same for Front Row. This says Front Row bought their third charter from Stewart-Haas in May. But that transaction, again, is still in escrow and requires approval from NASCAR. And that charter for next year has already been sort of signed over. So, Jordan, let's try this again. We'll bring you back.
In my defense, I did nothing wrong this time.
This time. The internet is full here. It didn't work on my computer. It stopped working on my phone. I have no idea. Technology hates me. Well, I've run through the lawsuit. What's your general feeling on where this all goes? Is this heading for settlement? Is this heading for a trial? What's going to happen, Jordan?
This is a real in-depth analysis. You ready for this? I don't know. And I don't think anybody really has a good sense of what's going to happen next, is because you have two groups in 2311 and NASCAR and Jim France who are very strong-willed, very used to kind of having everyone else bend to their will, getting what they want in negotiations, having the upper hand. And in this case, they're going head to head. What is it that 2311 wants? They really haven't specifically said that. I mean, we've talked to people and we have an idea maybe. And how do you resolve that if you're NASCAR? Because if you give 2311 something, you're going to have to give all the other teams something. And so everybody I've talked to about this is also the same thing. We don't know what's going to happen. And I talked to some team owners and team executives today, and they all said the same thing of, we don't know what's going to happen, but we're just going to sit in the sidelines and watch this unfold, because one of two things is going to happen. Either 2311 is going to get a better deal, which means then effectively we're all going to get a better deal, or this is going to end up coming out in a wash, and what we have, the deal that we signed that we're okay with, is going to go on, and we didn't piss off NASCAR. So, like, it's just these two conflicting sides, and there isn't like a common ground that I see where you can just say, hey, let's just meet in the middle here. Let's just, you give a little bit, I'll give a little bit. I mean, for 2 years they've been at, the loggerheads, and it hasn't come apart, and they're still butting heads. And it, from day one when the negotiations first started, it was contentious, and it hasn't eased up any sense. I just don't see how this doesn't end up going into a jury trial, which is what 2311 is seeking. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something along the way that, both sides just realize, hey, what are we doing here? But you look at Jeffrey Kessler and look at his history. This is his bread and butter. He is so good at this. He isn't somebody who just kind of backs away. He completely unraveled the NCAA amateur system. And so, is he going to be intimidated by NASCAR? I don't think so. But Jim France also isn't someone who likes to be bullied. I don't see how this doesn't end up in court before a jury.
I still feel like it's going to get settled just for the fact that I don't know that NASCAR wants to get to the point where they open their books and show what everybody's really making. And because that changes that, regardless of the outcome of the trial, that changes the sport, right? If
to some degree.
Well,
but here's a question for you though. NASCAR's a private bit. Like I agree with you about the discovery thing. Like we don't know what's in there, and there could be something that we don't want that out. And I don't want to say there is, but there could be. But if the talk is hey, NASCAR doesn't want to show their books, so they don't want to show how much money they're making. Well, of course they're making money. They signed billion-dollar TV deals. Like they've been around for 76 years. They're making money, and they are a private business. They're supposed to make money. They're not running a charity here. This isn't a nonprofit. There's going to be people like, whoa, they're making a lot more money. Are you paying that person, this amount, or you've got this and you're doing this? I get that. But in the grand scheme of things, like what is it about the numbers that are going to be so scandalous and so like, oh my God, we can't let people see this? That's to me is I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around.
Well, I think that the numbers that would be scandalous in a sense would be that they're making so much, right? Like, and that the teams have so little, when the teams have been saying, please give us more of this, please give us more of this. They're saying, now this is as much as we can do. I think Curtis Polk made the point that the drivers essentially make 3% of the revenue that's coming into NASCAR overall, something like that. In other sports, I believe that the athlete salaries are much higher. And of course they're arguing that what, go ahead.
Well, hang on. Let's just, and I'm not trying to defend NASCAR here. And he's right. And I get all that, but it's, to me, it's almost apples to oranges in a sense. Those are collectively bargained contracts. If the drivers want to form a union and collectively bargain, that's one thing. Drivers won't even tell us how much salary they make. They're so reluctant to say, hey, I make this amount of money. Whereas if they were actually upfront about, hey, I make this amount of money, it would actually help them, because then they would be like, well, I know so-and-so's making that, and I'm a hell of a lot better than him. I've got the stats to back it up. Like, if you want to go down that road, that's fine, but it has to be apples to apples. And that's where you lose me a little bit, because it's not.
I think what's interesting here is where this all goes from a fan standpoint, right? People are wanting to know, hey, I'm a NASCAR fan, right? Like, where do I fit into all this? What happens if NASCAR loses? What happens to my favorite sport? What happens if NASCAR wins, right? Typically in a monopoly situation, if it really did go to trial and NASCAR decided this is a monopoly and it needs to be broken up, that's where they would say, okay, well, NASCAR, you're going to have to give something back, right? Like, you're going to have to sell the tracks and you can run the sport and do the financials with the TV deal and stuff, but the tracks will have to be run by somebody else. Potentially that's something, maybe it is more of a league type thing.
So the teams buy in. The teams buy in then?
They already have. They have the charters. They would say, okay,
they have the charters, but there's a difference betwing again, we've heard this comparison of like, this is how the NFL operates. Well, in the NFL or any other, pretty much every other major sport, the teams own the league, effectively. Like,
that's what I'm saying. What
yeah,
happens?
that's what I'm asking.
What does the court
That's
decide?
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is, so then do the teams want that responsibility though as well? Do they want to be tasked with running a professional league? And then you're going down the road of, you better be careful what you wish for, because it's expensive, and two, figuring out how to manage that. We have seen many a series where the car owners took over and it hasn't worked out well.
Absolutely true. I'm just saying I don't know what the court would decide if they really took it to trial. For me, I would think that the teams want to see NASCAR's financials. The teams want to pressure NASCAR into getting a better deal. And then they go on from there, right? Like Jeffrey Kessler said in his press conference, they don't want to go from a grade D deal to a D+ deal. They're looking for quite a significant thing. They're not saying we're going to take it all the way to trial, but if they're going to settle, they want some pretty significant stuff. So is that permanent charters? Is that more revenue from other places? Is that, I don't know. They won't spell it out, right? 2311 in front row. They don't want to spell out the list of their demands. They're just saying, overall, we want fairness. And they feel like they're not being treated fairly at this moment in time. So, yeah, and I think what's going to be interesting as well, you talked about the other teams. Could we see other teams joining the lawsuit? You say that you've talked to some owners already who are just content to sit back and watch and have their popcorn, as you started this podcast with. Is there a chance that a team goes, hey, we were coerced into signing this deal. We want out of this, and now we will join and we will also go to court? Or are they just going to let 2311 in front row lead the way, and whatever happens with them, great?
I from the people I've talked to, I don't get a sense that anyone who of the 13 that signed are ready to come over. Now, I didn't talk to all 13, so maybe there's someone out there that would, but it sounds like from the conversations I've had that they've looked at, a lot of these teams have looked at it and said, hey, our lawyers have looked at it. We don't feel like there's a case here, or it's not worth the risk. Maybe we win. Maybe we sign up with these guys and we win, but maybe we don't. And then what? And so, we'll see. It'll be interesting. Now that the lawsuit is actually filed, that's going to be the thing, because you were never going to get a team to come over before the lawsuit was filed. Like, you wanted to see what 2311 and front row were going to do and how this was going to come to a head. And now that it's come to a head and the lawsuit's in, will another team? We'll see. I just didn't get a sense from the conversations I've had with people that it's necessarily going to happen. They were content to let basically 2311 in front row, lead the way. And if they're going to lead the way, again, if they're going to lead the way and change becomes like of that, and they win the lawsuit, it's going to affect all of them positively anyway. So there's no need necessarily to sign up with them. Just let them deal with it. Let them handle it. Let them, all the repercussions that may come their way, they can handle the fallout. We'll sit over here, and at the end, we're going to get whatever they're going to get as well.
I think one other thing that fans are certainly wondering is, wow, boy, if you're Denny Hamlin running for the championship, if you're Tyler Reddick running for the championship, what kind of retaliation could NASCAR take? Because there's always been a thing, like in Days of Thunder, he says, have y'all ever heard of Japanese inspection or whatever? And, we're, it's been the NASCAR way, right? Like, you think, there's been times when NASCAR's been pissed off at a team and they've been the random for like
inspection. Yeah.
Right. So,
they end up having to go back to the teardown. They end up going back to the R&D center.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so it's going to be like, well, does this torpedo Denny's chances of winning a championship, things like that, right? Could NASCAR do that? Jeffrey Kessler, the attorney, says in his experience, because he's done this in other sports when there was sensitivity involved, the defense attorneys, so NASCAR's attorneys, would be telling them, hey, listen, you really, you really got to actually be extra careful here. You can't do any of that because that is going to not fly in court if it comes out that there was retaliation for this. And so he said, we'll be ready if there is anything like that. But it sounded like he was actually not concerned that there would be anything from NASCAR that would be any sort of punishment. Maybe you cannot do that while they're being watched legally. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that's the right mindset. If you're NASCAR, you have to be extra diligent. It's almost like, hey, Denny, you get a free pass on pit road. Like, you go as fast as you want to, because anything we do is going to be is going to be looked at through a microscope. There is extra spotlight on us. And if we do something wrong, we penalize you for something, it could be perceived as, a retribution. Anything we do is going to have to be absolutely a penalty. If you speed on pit road, we've got monitors that that can justify that. If your car fails tack, we're gonna have to clearly show you why that is. It's going to be, everything has to be extremely buttoned up, because if it's not, it will hurt you in court, and it will probably cost you the lawsuit.
So it seemed like, as of less than a month ago, when NASCAR was able to get 13 out of 15 owners to sign, even though they put them under pressure to do so and threatened, according to the lawsuit, to torpedo the entire charter system if a significant number did not agree to do this. That was enough for most owners. That was enough for them to go, all right, I'm not willing to lose my investment. I'm not willing to lose perhaps, in 2311's case, almost $100 million worth of charters, right? If they're worth maybe 50 each or something. And of course, the other 4-car teams, Rick Hendrick said, ultimately, to your question, I'm tired. That's why I signed it. I'm tired, right? So most everybody got in line and they said, we got what we can get. This is clearly the end of the negotiation. NASCAR is not going to give us anything more. This is it. And so it was more than we got before. So, hey, that's good enough. And it looked like at the time there was a pretty big win for NASCAR, right? Because it was like, what can 2311 and Front Row possibly do now? They have no leverage. They're not going to get a better deal than the other teams got. And I guess this is maybe the answer to that, right? Like, whatever happens with this is maybe this was, do you think this was the plan all along? I guess, like, what I'm wondering is, this whole time we're like, how can they win? They're not going to get anything more from NASCAR. Did 2311 have it in the back of their mind all along this whole time? And maybe Front Row. But certainly 2311, hey, we'll go to court if we need to. If they're not going to, we'll try to be in good faith. And if they're not going to do it, we're going to court. You think that's what the plan was?
I think that was one of the options. It was always an option. And it was certainly a thing of, our negotiating tactics didn't work. What are we going to do? What is the only thing we can do? And that is go to court, and is to go convince 12 people on a jury that this is a monopoly and have them decide what the penalty is. I don't see what else they could do, because they don't have, they can continue to run as an open car, but that doesn't do anything, because you're going to lose millions of dollars. So this was the play. This was the only play they had. This is it. This is the Hail Mary. This is it. The game's on the line. You've tried. This is it. Everything comes down to this. And it's fascinating. And you go through everything. And the one thing that jumped out to me, and a few things that jumped out to me, is you read it and you're like, okay, like, we know, like they talked about buying the ARCA series, and it's like, oh, it's ARCA. Like, like, relax. It's not buying a competitor. It's a third-rate series, let's calm down. But to a jury, that they don't necessarily know the difference. They can just see, hey, they bought another competitor of a stock car series. And that's what you need to do. And if you don't worry about getting too in the weeds, you just present it as is. And I was talking to a team owner today, and he was like, he called me back, and he was like, at first this morning, he was like, yeah, I just, I don't know where this is going to go. I don't think 2311 could maybe, win this. And then he called me back. He's like, I don't know. Like you start looking at this and you start looking at this, and like you just, as long as you don't get too far in the weeds and you just kind of leave it on a very new, very basic level, and you just say, hey, they bought this series, they bought a bunch of tracks, because again, a lot of the tracks they bought were already under kind of the NASCAR portfolio, under ISC, right? Like Jim France was on the board, Lisa France Kennedy was on the board. Like it was France family controlled. So we know, because we're in it, that like it was always NASCAR. Even though it was a publicly traded company, it was always NASCAR. But if you spin it the right way in court and you say to a jury, well, they bought all of these tracks and they brought them in house so they can do whatever they want, and you can show like, hey, we took a date away from this track and we took a date away from this track, and they're dictating all of these things, you have a chance to convince people. Like they look at this, the totality of it, and like, oh, they did X, Y, and Z. Yeah, I could see that.
So the next steps that we need to follow here in the story is the teams have filed for an injunction. And the injunction, what it would do is allow them to operate under the terms of the charter agreement while this process plays out. So, as you know, the charters are expiring December 31st. The current ones, the new ones kick in next year. But if the court grants them an injunction, which would be come through a hearing, probably soon, potentially within the next couple weeks, maybe next week, then the teams would know that, okay, as long as this process is going through court, we will be getting the money that comes with the charter still, if it goes into next year, all that stuff. So that's going to be the first big thing to follow, right? Because if the court doesn't grant that, this whole case is probably dead in the water. But it seems like they probably will, because they're going to let it. You would think the court would let it play out, not just dismiss the case outright. I mean, I would guess. Again, based on Jeffrey Kessler's experience, he is saying he's litigated all these antitrust things about pretty much every major sport. And this, he says, is the most egregious one he's ever seen. Of course, he's a lawyer, so he's going to say that. But he says the most egregious one he's ever seen, that one family has been able to control an entire sport and enrich themselves, and not the competitors and the teams who are the ones participating in it. Jordan, since we don't have NASCAR's side of this, what do you think NASCAR is thinking right now about this? Are they worried? Are they scared? Are they like, whatever, this is no big deal, we're going to be fine with this? What do you think their mindset is at the moment?
Ooh, that's a really good question. It's a really good question. I say this because we don't know what's in the discovery, and that's, to me, is the key of this whole thing. If what is in the discovery and what comes out from that, and is that going to put us is that going to paint a black eye? Is it going to put us in a corner? Is it going to present an image of the company that we don't want, and we're going to have a hard time, with the teams and sponsors, etc.? I don't know. Jim France has never been somebody who likes to be told what to do. He comes from, his family's been that way. He's always been that way. He is, to a point, he's very mild mannered, but when he gets to a point and you push and you push and you push and he has to push back, he pushes back hard. And how he responds to an outsider coming in and saying, hey, we don't like this, we're taking you to court. It hasn't gone over well so far. And we have seen that in how NASCAR's handled the negotiations. They went from talking to the teams to, we're going to divide and conquer, and we're going to do it how we always have done it. And that's been our approach. I just don't see them deviating from what they have long done, which is, this is how we do things. We are a private business. We follow the law. And as long as we follow legally, we follow the law, we're going to be okay. We're not doing anything wrong. It's a private business. We're supposed to make money. Like, hello, like if we own the racetracks and we own the series, that's fine. You guys are independent contractors. We've never pretended that you are anything but independent contractors. You don't work for us. You come here on your own accord to race here, and we're going to, that's fine. But you're not part of this. This isn't like some big association that we're all part of. This is our series. You follow our rules. This is how it is. We're a private business. So I don't know. We'll see. I think you would think that cooler heads would prevail and that there's some kind of settlement, but we've said that for how long now? Like we've said that for almost 2 years of like, hey, at some point everybody's going to come to an agreement. They're going to figure out, we're going to meet in the middle somewhere. And it really hasn't happened. Even the negotiation that the 13 teams signed for, it really wasn't like meeting in the middle. It was NASCAR basically saying, this is our final offer, take it or leave it. And if you leave it, the charter system's gone. I don't know.
If I was NASCAR, I think I would be absolutely livid. I would be furious because I would think, you know what? I never should have given those people charters to begin with. We gave them these charters. They grew to be worth over $40 million. We gave them some value. Now we're giving them more TV money. What else do you people want? What else do you want? This is our family sport, right? All this stuff. But as in the lawsuit, the facts are they control the tracks, they control the cars, they control the competition in buying ARCA, right? Like they control. So perhaps there's a case to be made that by the legal definition, this is a monopoly. I don't know. This is for the courts to decide. On the other hand, if I'm the owners who did sign this, I'm thinking, man, I maybe I would have liked to hold out because the only reason I signed was because I thought I was going to lose my charters and I couldn't afford to do that. Right? Like I know I had a piece of paper that's worth $50 million, maybe multiple pieces of paper worth this much money. You're holding the winning lottery tickets and somebody's coming up to you and saying, hey, if you don't do X, these lottery tickets are voided. They're worth nothing. So you want to take that chance? You want to play ball? And I'd be like, oh man, I hate this guy, but I don't like this tactic. But okay, I don't want my lottery tickets to be worthless, right? So
yeah,
that's why most of the time.
I had a team owner today tell me I did not have the balls to do what 2311 in Front Row did because I was worried about losing my charters.
But why did they have the balls?
Because what else they have? They've got MJ. They've got that money. I mean, that's part of it. And that they have the world's most famous athlete or one of the world's most famous athletes, and they feel like they are in a position of power because if you're and we've had this conversation where if you're NASCAR, if you're 2311, you go to NASCAR and be like, do you really want to be responsible for pushing us out for all of the goodwill we brought, all of the publicity we brought, all of the attention we brought? You want us to pack up and go? You want to tell Michael Jordan he's not welcome here? That's a hammer that that other teams don't have.
I just think in terms of the let's call it to put it politely, screw you money, not with the initial U money, but there's Roger Penske, Rick Hendrick, those guys are wealthy, but they've been around long enough. They're not going to go all the way on this, but MJ is worth literally billions, right? And if anybody has the money to be like, you know what, if I have to lose my charters to go through this battle, so be it. I can afford it. And guess what? Yeah. Bob Jenkins isn't some slouch either. The guy owns like a zillion Taco Bells and Long John Silver's, and I don't know if you've ever seen the drive-through lines for those places, but they're making money.
You've been to Long John Silver's?
Yeah, I've been to a Long John Silver's.
Oh, I've never been. This sounds fast food, seafood doesn't sound good.
I mean, I'm not saying I go all the time, but I've been. It's fried.
Huh?
So surely frying it has got to take out whatever some of the germs or.
It just can't be the top quality. I'm a little concerned by that.
Okay. Do you have do you ever microwave fish sticks or something?
Oh hell no! No, God no! I haven't had fish since I was like a kid. You eat fish sticks?
Well, I mean, I try to feed them to my children, but
oh my goodness.
Okay. Well, you're a seafood elitist. That's fine, but other people do eat. Anyway, and there's a lot of money in that, as well as Taco Bell. Anyway, so he has money too, is what I'm trying to say. And of course, he doesn't want to lose his charters. But the bottom line is these people are like viewing this as a calculated risk, right? These are business people that do this stuff all the time. There's a chance this could backfire on them. There's a chance this could fail, but there's also a chance it could work out, and they feel like this would be best for the sport overall in their view. So this is all to be determined. This is all going to play out in a very fascinating manner. As Jordan said, I mean, I don't think any of us can be sure what's going to happen, but from a standpoint of having no dog in the fight, which I would assume most of you listening to this feel like, you're just sort of fascinated to watch. I personally hope it gets to the discovery phase, because I'd love to see how the sport really works. I mean, wouldn't you be curious to read through the financials of NASCAR if it gets through that and find out where the money's all really going, and how much the parts cost, and how much this costs, and
everything,
what the tracks are taking in, and the ticket sales, and
it's going to be how many people attend a race. It's going to be so good. That is the part. Selfishly, on the reporter side of me, that's what I want to see. That's the information I want.
I just think, I mean, we don't know the true attendance anymore. We don't know the true. We don't know. We used to know attendance. We used to know how much the purse was for each race, how much the teams were making, right? And it would be on
quarterly reports.
Sure, that too. But like, this could be exposed publicly, right? Like, we're potentially a few months away from that, to getting to see it. So we're neutral here, but it sure would be fascinating to be able to get a look behind the curtain, and all that in the process of this all playing out. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what the reaction is this weekend at Talladega. Funny enough, Talladega coming up. Talladega was the scene of the most famous pushback against NASCAR. You wrote about that for The Athletic once, didn't you?
Yeah, oral history I'll put it out there in social media. Oral history of the 1969, the first Talladega race ever, where drivers packed up and said, "We're going home." And Bill France, Sr. and Jr. were like, "Go. You don't want to be here. We don't want you here. See ya."
They tried boycotting, and how'd that work out for them, Jordan?
The drivers folded.
They folded.
And
NASCAR is sort of undefeated in that manner, right?
They are. That's
anybody
the thing.
That's come at NASCAR over the years. You come at the king, you best not miss.
And a lot of people have missed.
There's another situation.
And they banned
go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, Curtis Turner. They banned Curtis Turner, who at the time was considered the Babe Ruth of stock car racing. And who was good friends with Bill France Sr. They'd want to race together down in Mexico and stuff, or they'd race down, he no problem. Like, sorry, this is, we don't want Teamsters in our sport. You're gone.
I wonder what, how this will affect Denny Hamlin's legacy. I don't know if this delays him getting into the Hall of Fame, things like that, depending on how all this shakes out. It'll be fascinating to watch all the repercussions, the implications, again, that come with this. We have some stuff for you to read on The Athletic, quotes, stats, sort of trying to do deep dive into this. We have a news story. We talked last night to Bob Jenkins, Jeffrey Kessler, Denny Hamlin, Curtis Polk. We have a story up with quotes from them. We have an explainer on what's happening. I have a column that's coming up shortly, if not now, about Michael Jordan and his place in all this. This is a guy who says, and I took that personally, right? He doesn't like to lose. So where does he end up in all this? You're talking to team owners. You're going to have a story about that. So check out our work on The Athletic. We're going to be covering the heck out of the story. This is probably is this the biggest story of the last few years? It feels like it's.
Oh, yeah.
It has potential to be.
I mean, someone today said it was the biggest story since 2001 at the Daytona 500.
I was thinking about saying that, and I don't want to be hyperbolic, but
I don't.
Depending how this plays out, it could be. We could look back on it certainly and say this was a big day.
It's the biggest story I've ever covered since I've been on this beat, and so I'm a hard time even thinking that would even be close to this.
Yeah, this is a big potentially historic day. So this is our emergency podcast for now. We will be back, of course, with a post-race podcast from Talladega. We'll both be together there. So looking forward to seeing what happens. It'll be nice to talk about, of course, some on-track stuff as well, in addition to all this drama. But
that's boring,
maybe,
man. The off-track stuff's where it's at.
Well, this is going to be interesting. Anyway, thanks for joining us on this emergency podcast, and we will talk to you next time on the Teardown. See you, everybody.